Oh hi, Dave Rome here. If you're hearing this, then you're on the free feed of the Escape Collective podcast network. We're happy you're here, and we'll continue to give plenty of expert opinion and analysis away for free. But really, our best stuff is saved for members of Escape Collective. After all, with no advertising or affiliate links, it's our members who make this all possible. From in-depth interviews with leading experts, to class-leading reviews, through to unique things like my threaded series for anyone spinning spanners of any level. That's the sort of content you'll get by becoming a member. And as an added bonus, you won't have to listen to ads like this again. Head to escapecollective.com/join to sign up.
Welcome back to the Spin Cycle Podcast, everybody. I'm Kaylee Fretz. It is Friday, January 24th. Joining me today, Dane Cash, welcome.
Hey, Kaylee.
And Johnny Long.
Hello, hello.
Today on the show, Caleb Ewan is headed to Ineos. Jenny Van Poppel got a yellow card. Rigoberto Uran really cannot play soccer. And we are headed back to Cav Corner. Let's get to it. All right, let's kick things off. We love a little transfer corner over here. Dane, Caleb Ewan, we know where he's going. We're tracking this story over the last couple weeks. We've got a destination now.
We do. Caleb Ewan, who for those who don't know, weren't following the story, he kind of just mysteriously disappeared from all of Jayco Alula's marketing material, their website. He was just gone from their roster on the website as of 2 weeks ago now, maybe a couple weeks ago. So we knew that something was up. Something was weird there. That doesn't happen normally.
Can you imagine if that's how I fired somebody?
Oh, man.
Just disappeared you from
kind of a bummer.
Website.
Don't do that.
Strong start to the podcast, this.
And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, maybe it would be an easy mix. Like, okay, let's say they put him back on the website the next day. But no, it was clearly intentional. And he was just not being mentioned in their press release about what's going to happen this year. Anyway, we now know that he has a new team. So he is headed to the Ineos Grenadiers, which is something that was sort of telegraphed by Geraint Thomas the other day, who at his pre-Tour Down Under, I guess it was the pre-Tour Down Under press conference, it was some media appearance, he was asked about this before we officially knew about the signing. And he kind of did a little, I've heard some rumors, and it'll be great. It'll be a great thing. And lo and behold, Caleb Ewan, 1 year deal, so he has 1 year to prove himself. Yeah, I love it. Ineos didn't have a whole lot to lose here. I think Ewan's a guy who can do pretty well without too much of a lead out, and they don't really have a whole lot of lead out.
They have no lead out.
They got Ben Swift, maybe a bit of Filippo Ganna.
Well, I actually thought
Ethan Hayter used to win.
Filippo Ganna would be a pretty solid 4 to 2K out.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Geraint Thomas with Cav at the Giro.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Put Geraint Thomas in the train.
Yeah.
The backstory here, just to touch on that as well, again, in case anybody missed this, I'll keep it brief. But the sort of other backstory was that Caleb Ewan was briefly looked to be headed to Astana.
Correct, yeah.
And just as a reminder, that is why Jayco Alula basically got rid of his team slot, or filled his team slot with somebody else. And then when the Astana deal fell apart, all of a sudden there was not really any room for Caleb Ewan at Jayco Alula. And so another solution had to be found. And it sounds like this is a solution that works for pretty much everybody, right? Like I think if I was Caleb Ewan, I'd even today's Ineos, I'd still rather go there than Astana, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Although he's going to miss out on working with Mark Renshaw, which is kind of a bummer.
Astana's
obviously a director over there.
And Cheeseball.
And Cheeseball. Astana probably has a better lead out.
They have a better
sprint
infrastructure for sure.
Yeah, but you're just working for Alexander Vinokurov, which is interesting.
Who says he'll sign you and then ultimately doesn't sign you and leaves you, on your own island, which is never good for your employment.
And Ineos, I think them having a sprinter makes a ton of sense, right? It's sort of the diversification of Ineos. They haven't really gone down that pathway yet. And yeah, they don't have a lead out per se right now because those riders haven't been used in that way in the last couple of years, but they have sort of the requisite parts to make one.
Yeah, you're right.
They want to.
They have some of the talents there. And CEO John Allett, fellow Aussie, So he's leaving the Aussie team, the team that he's got plenty of experience with, but I think he'll probably fit in just fine at Ineos. And as Geraint Thomas said, they know each other. I'm sure Caleb Ewan knows plenty of the riders at Ineos, English-speaking outfit and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
The one thing they do need is wins, which you'd think Caleb Ewan will be able to get them a few of. Because last year they had 14, and then that included wins from riders who are no longer at Ineos, including Tom Pidcock, Ethan Hayter, Jonathan Navice. So a marriage of convenience, but also one that maybe could work out. I'd be interested to know how much money he's gone for, but we don't get to know that because that all has to be secret for some reason. But it would be interesting to know.
I would imagine a contract like this is very incentives based.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before in other similar instances, an eat what you kill kind of scenario, right? If he wins a bunch of races, then he will eat well. And if he doesn't, then he won't.
I think he'll eat just fine, no matter what, considering his situation financially.
It isn't his partner's parents like massive.
Well, one, I think that is accurate, and two, I think he's made plenty of money in his career, so I think he'll be eating fine.
He has. Yeah.
They're going to be fine.
Yeah,
he's going to be fine. Yeah, but like it's similar to sort of the end of Cav's career, right? That was how they structured a lot of his contracts because again, this is an athlete who's made millions over the course of their career. They don't necessarily like joking about eating to kill, right, or killing to eat. They don't need to eat. they've got the cash for that.
Famously, they don't really.
Yeah, but they want the opportunity to get some nice big bonuses if they do well. So that's how I would imagine.
And
the fact
30.
that it's a 1 year deal, it's a 1 year deal, which would further suggest that Ineos is not seeing this as much of a risk for them, right?
Yeah,
only upside.
30 years old, he could have a few years left in him yet.
Yeah,
it's not that old.
No,
as a 30-year-old,
winning ways. Get back to his winning ways.
Yeah.
Well, we have more sprinter news on the docket here, which is that we had a yellow card at the Tour Down Under this week. Yes. Specifically for Danny Van Poppel, who is the lead out man of Sam Welsford, who's already won stages. We talked about yellow cards when they first were sort of announced. What was this one for?
So this, I think, might be the first yellow card for the men's peloton after the trial period, which ended on 31st December 2024. So this was on stage 2 of the Tour Down Under, right in the sprint finish, maybe a couple hundred meters before the line. And Danny Van Poppel has just sort of unleashed Sam Welsford from his wheel. And then you can see in the overhead replay, Danny Van Poppel looks over his right shoulder and can see the other sprinters coming past. It's a guy called Andresen for Picnic Post-Anel is coming into the slipstream of Welsford, and Van Poppel just sort of glides over to block him, NFL style, which is not allowed. It's diverting from your line. Welsford won the stage. Maybe he was going to anyway, but the victory is a bit clouded by that maneuver. And as punishment, Van Poppel got the usual 500 Swiss franc fine. Lost his points and mountain points for the day, but he also got a yellow card. But this is kind of a weird one because it's like a teammate. It's like a tactical foul in football, right? Where you'll make a last ditch challenge to prevent a goal to benefit the team, and you take the individual punishment. So it's kind of bringing that into play in cycling. And the only difference is, and the reason why it's really not okay, is because it's penalization for danger and a lot of danger. So Welsford, nothing happens to him. He gets away scot-free, but Van Poppel, his lead-out man, sort of takes a hit almost for ensuring that Welsford wins, which seems that at the first yellow card of the season proper for the men, it's already hit a bit of a stumbling block.
Well, I would say that in this is a great case of how the yellow card is at least better than what we had. Because at least with the yellow card system, you can't do this a lot. Now, before, the only thing that would happen to Van Poppel is that he would get fined, and then
and maybe relegated to the back of the group, which he doesn't care about anyway.
Which isn't things that he doesn't care about are the only things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
And either way, yes, Welsford gets off scot-free. At least in this new system, Welsford's teammates can't all continuously do this. So it's certainly not great that Welsford. I personally don't know that Welsford himself should be penalized, but you're pointing out the key flaw here is that Welsford's the one who benefits, and the ones who are penalized are not going to care that much. However, at least with a yellow card, his teammates can't just do this ad infinitum. They have to stop at some point.
True, but so there's one more sprint stage on the last day in Adelaide at the Tour Down Under. So say Van Poppel gets a similar, does something similar, gets another yellow card. So that's 2 yellow cards, which means he's disqualified for 7 days. His next race isn't until the UAE Tour, which is in mid-February. So he could serve that suspension. And then on the handy note that Kit popped through actually during the week, which is like a nice infographic, there's a clarification at the bottom which says a yellow card that has been taken into account for the imposition of a period of ineligibility shall no longer be taken into account in the future. So does that mean that so how do you build yourself up to getting 6 yellow cards within a 1 year period for a 30-day suspension? Or does that not mean that it scrubs it? It's just the classic thing of you can read it and there's so many interpretations. Yeah. And even a 6 yellow cards within a year for 30 days off.
That's a lot.
You could Champs-Élysées at the Tour. You get a yellow card there. That's number 6. You're probably off already till, September races.
Right. Well, this is the funny thing about the calendar, right? Is like the race, they don't have to race everything.
They don't.
So it's irrelevant. Yeah. Nor do you need Sam Welsford for most of the season.
Or Danny Van
Poppel for most of the season, right? Like I think it's an improvement for the same reasons Dane mentioned, but it's not really a solution to doing this. I mean, like, because it's for dangerous riding, it feels like the threshold should be lower, right?
Yeah.
Like
that should be a red card. What Van Poppel did, right?
Yeah.
A yellow card should be just for like a slight thing.
Yeah. In which case you don't get to race the next day.
In this particular instance, he did something that you see quite frequently, and I think it's tricky for the judges to decide on how to card him, because I think you can do this and get away with it without any card pretty easily. Yeah. The problem is he looked back, which then it's like, okay, he knew what he was doing. So now he can't really say, "Oh, I was just I just swung off in that direction. That's just how the cookie crumbled." He can't really say that when you like look back and you're like, "Oh, there's some sprinters. I'm going to go block those guys now." That makes it a little bit harder to get away with it.
Oh wow, it's only like the safety of human beings we've got to worry about, hey, isn't it?
Well, it's safety of sprinters, and they're all taking their lives in their hands anyway. I think that's part of sprinting at least, that they're going to go in here doing this, knowing what the risks are.
I guess, but really, it's not the way to start the season.
No, it's not great.
No. Can we pivot into what's actually happened to TDU? Because we're going to be chatting about Sam Welsford anyway.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
And Danny Van Poppel.
Yeah. So we're, as of record time, we are 3 stages into the men's Tour Down Under. By the time you're hearing this, I guess we'll be 4 stages in at least. Sam Welsford won the first 2 days pretty clearly. Quite a fast finisher, Sam Welsford, and especially fast when racing at the Tour Down Under. And then the third stage into Uridla got a little bit more interesting. I mean, with no offense to the sprinters, but there were some hills, which is good.
Offense taken, Dane.
Sorry.
Offense taken.
Are you a sprinter, Kelly?
Yeah. I used to be, actually.
Yeah. All right.
Really?
Yeah. Not. I don't know if you noticed. I don't really look like Sam Welsford. But yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well,
that was my thing. Sprints from small groups.
Wow. All right.
So I am offended.
So
deeply.
The third stage, Jonathan Narvaez was hoping it would be a sprint from a small group, I think. And instead, Javier Romo of the Movistar team had other ideas and attacked out of a small group in the hilly finale and managed to take the stage and the race lead. So that's where we stand now. Javier Romo leads the race for Movistar. Doesn't have a big lead. Narvaez currently sitting second, and I think looking at hopefully bouncing back here in the coming days.
I think that's his first World Tour win.
First professional win, I think.
First professional win. He's 26. So anyway, any of our bike grid players out there, that's a good little tip off. No one ever going to be picking Javier Romo. Never.
Yep.
The Tour Down Under stages finish about 5 a.m. my time. So I'm not awake at that hour. I've got more to live for than that. But the Eurosport highlights aren't up until the person in Europe or the UK has got into the office and cut it together. So it's looking like about 10 a.m. So I had to go on YouTube and find, I think it's like Cyclisme Actu, which is, I think, a French YouTube channel who clips up some highlights. But the highlights for the stage 3 was insane because it's only like 2.5 minutes long and it's like few attacks going like with 50k to go. And then suddenly the next clip is just Javier Romo just like up the road and they haven't shown like any of it. So it was kind of like the literal like watching of when you could have just read the race results. It was a moment when I was thankful for the Eurosport Warner Brothers family, but I just wish they would get up early for the Tour Down Under.
I want to return to Sam Welsford really briefly. Nothing against Javier Romo, but I don't
That's fine.
really. Yeah,
that's
fine. Anyway, Sam Welsford's more interesting to me. He did similar things this time last year and then was relatively quiet the rest of the year. There was an interview with Danny Van Poppel, actually, quite blunt one and frank one that was basically like, yeah, he doesn't train hard enough. Basically, didn't take it seriously enough. I think he described him as a very Australian attitude. And apologies to our Aussie listeners out there, but just kind of he was last year was quite focused on the track. He was going to the Olympics in Paris, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, Van Poppel was saying this year, I have taken him under my wing, and I'm going to make him train hard, and he's going to be way faster, because basically Van Poppel was like, I don't like leading out sprinters that don't win, and I have no interest in that, which is valid, right? You do all that work, you put yourself in danger,
you get all those yellow cards. You
want the person behind you to seal the deal, right? The question is then, with the tutelage of Danny Van Poppel, been around the block a couple times, do we think Welsford is sort of a legit season-long sprint contender now, which he has not been thus far?
In 2025, I think potentially. In 2015, when like 3 guys dominated everything, no. But in 2025, like, name 3 riders who are clearly better sprinters. I can maybe name one.
Is he gonna beat the Groenewegen and Philipsen?
I think he could certainly beat Groenewegen in a sprint.
What about Milan? Jonathan Milan?
I could think he could beat those guys. I don't think he's favored to win, but I think like it's a very wide open time. He didn't race a Grand Tour last year. Send him to the Giro, see what happens. I think it's possible.
I think it's also, I know actually it's Sam Welsford's contract year, which always helps with a little bit of motivation. Hungry dogs run faster.
That is true.
Danny Van Poppel, or I can't think of an example from the top of my head, but he always just says the most for a dude who, I mean, I'm grateful that he says a lot, but he must get back in the team bus and everyone's just like, could you just stop? Like, stop telling everyone I'm lazy.
I appreciate it. He's trying to, it's like little external motivation for Sam Welsford. Needed a little nudge in the ribs.
He's also been around the block. Van Poppel,
he really has.
He's earned it at this point. He's not super old. He's only 31, but he's been on a World Tour team. He started his World Tour career at Vacansoleil in 2013. So he's got more than a decade in the Pro Peloton already. He's earned the right, I think, to say whatever the hell he wants.
Agreed. Did you see Thomas de Gent's comments in Het Nieuwsblad about riders not really wanting to go to the... Speaking of Vacansoleil, riders not really wanting to go to the Tour Down Under anymore.
What a segue.
It's the
We're in Vacansoleil van. We're in Vacansoleil.
Yeah, van. I like the van. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anyway.
It was pretty blunt about Australia.
He was saying basically it's just too far to go to if you're like a rider who's trying to properly condition yourself in this day and age for the rest of the racing season, which is bad. I mean, we see how Ian Treloar gets off the plane at the Tour de France or Belgium.
Like when I talk to Aussies, when like we all travel to Europe or whatever, or the UAE, and they're like talking about the ordeal they've gone through to get there. Like I get it.
Yeah, like a sort of Greek odyssey.
It's like the first day you get to a race and you got to hear about the Aussies' travel and how awful it was. And I'm like, man, I feel jet lagged, but I guess I should shut up because I don't think I'm going to be able to compete with the Australians.
They do get flown over there in business class, like lie flat seats. It's not that bad.
Do they?
Yeah.
What for the Middle Eastern races?
Well, for Middle Eastern races and to TDU.
Sorry, you mean the riders? I thought you meant the journalists. I was like, what is this?
No. Yeah, I was also thinking
no.
I was going to say.
Okay.
No, but like this is just it's the okay. Thomas de Gent is correct. In the sort of modern age where you're not supposed to miss any training and it could ruin your whole season. Blah blah blah. But also, it's just the Europeans being soft as hell.
Oh, nice, good take.
I like
seriously,
that take.
Like
it's a good take.
Like they get to drive to half of their races. The Aussies and the Americans have been dealing with this for years and years and years. They get a nice lie flat seat all the way to Adelaide. Cry me a river. Thomas again.
Yeah, if it's business class, that changes my whole worldview of this, Kaylee. I'm glad. Okay.
Well, because there was a whole thing a year or two ago that they had put the men in business class and the women got flown over in economy.
Yeah, that's
which is bad vibes.
Yeah,
and I think they've solved that. I think they have. I haven't checked in on it. Yeah, like come on. I mean, the rest of the world has to fly to Europe on a regular basis. Like a lot of the Americans these days are actually spending more time at home in the US because it's less stressful for them. They're flying back and forth a couple times a season. I have flown to Europe dozens of times and you're fine within about 36 hours, right?
I mean,
you get off the plane, you go for a little bike ride that day. The next day you could train.
Agreed. I mean, if you look at how many Americans are in Europe these days, I mean, most people don't have a problem with it. And I mean, when you have to come over, Kaylee, you have to basically fly your own little propeller plane to Denver Airport.
That's true. You have a whole extra.
That's what
leg.
I heard.
Yeah.
I actually have a neighbor of mine and me. We want to get pilot's licenses and get a plane.
That'll end well. Yeah, go for it.
It'll end with me in a small plane on the side of a mountain in the San Juans. Is what it will end with.
That's fun. But yeah, I mean, I like it when you get those quotes. Thomas de Gent, lovely guy. I think probably one of the more normal of the Belgian cyclists. But there's still that missing bit of like their brain or life experience where they complain about things which are just
normal.
Normal problems.
Well, because particularly for the Belgians, you could race most of a season within a 2.5 hour drive of your house.
You literally have to walk to Schiphol Airport to get on like a direct flight to Adelaide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Most of the races, I mean, like the Vuelta is the farthest they'll go, most of them.
Yeah.
And even that isn't. That
and it's like a 55-minute EasyJet flight.
Yep.
Yeah. They're just soft. They're very soft. All right.
Belgians are soft. That's a good Kaylee Fred's take. I like that.
Yeah, Belgians are soft. All right. Well, let's wrap up TDU right there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got new feed zone rules to talk about. This is sort of, was announced a bit ago, but is now hitting at TDU. And we've got Cav Corner. We're headed back to Cav Corner. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. New feed zone rules. Not the sexiest of topics, generally. Not the sort of thing we might spend a ton of time on in the pod, but actually quite interesting and relevant, and maybe a bigger change than I think people are giving it credit for. This popped up in our member Discord, actually, and Laura Weislow over at Cycling News wrote a story about it from TDU, and I know a couple of the sort of the pods that are on the ground there were chatting about it as well. The change here, which was announced at the same time as the ban on lead out people celebrating. So that was the thing that got all the kind of headlines when this happened. But the feed zone thing probably has a bigger impact on the actual sport, which is that up until today, teams could basically feed anywhere, right? Like there were official feed zones, but there were also just staff, volunteers, whatever, kind of all over the course. They'd hand a bottle or whatever. And most teams were utilizing that fact quite heavily. That, like, if you think back to, for example, like the Chris Froome Giro ride, right? The famous Chris Froome Giro ride. One of the things they did there was they stuck a ton of staff throughout the course. So he was constantly getting food, constantly getting water. And a lot of the other teams have sort of followed that trend.
SIS food. I remember they loved telling us, like, the marketing that they did after that was like, he was fueled.
He was fueled by the science and the sport.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, what they're doing now, there's always been feed zones. That's where you would get, you get your musette and you put them in a good spot generally where there's like slightly uphill and they're not going 1,000 miles an hour. But yeah, they were also getting fed all over the place. And given the sort of modern trends in nutrition, that was good because the riders are eating a ton, they're drinking a ton, and it prevented the need to go back to the team car as much, which is also kind of, it's dangerous back there. It's a ton of work to get back there. There's a lot of young riders these days that have never had to do that, right? Because they've got musettes on the side of the road all over the place. So the change is that they are now requiring teams can only put staff, volunteers, whatever, in designated feed zones, but they've increased the number of them. Is a big deal because of what I mentioned before, which is the sort of the changes in the way that riders feed themselves in the last couple of years and the changes in nutrition and the fact that they're eating a lot more than they used to be. And I think the end result is the potential, not the guarantee, but the potential to bring back epic bonks.
You think?
Yeah. And by bonking, this, I realized, I think that's an American term for this and it doesn't really work elsewhere. Definitely doesn't work in Australia, I believe. But it's the sugar crash, right? The I'm out of glycogen sugar crash that we used to see somewhat frequently in pro cycling, and we don't see it anymore. If you can only feed in these designated areas, if you miss a feed, the chances of this happening to you as a pro rider go up considerably. So that essentially is the outcome, the potential outcome of this in my mind, is that if teams mess it up, if riders mess it up, we could see this sort of the classic, like sugar crash in pro cycling again, which has been gone for like a decade. And I find that highly enjoyable. I mean, back in the day, like Tour de France winners used to bonk regularly. What's the British term
A
for
knock,
this, Johnny?
maybe? Like a hunger knock?
Hunger knock. Hunger knock. Okay.
Bonk means something different. If you're saying make the peloton bonk again, then I'm sure a lot of them would get on board with that.
Let's use hunger knock. That one has fewer connotations elsewhere.
Bonk was one of the words that was thrown onto the like mood board when we were trying to name Escape. Do you remember? I mean, we've still managed to go for riding is life, which in Ireland means something completely different to getting on your bike. But language is crazy, isn't it?
Do we want hunger knocks back in pro cycling?
Yeah, definitely.
I do.
More of a possibility of them, at least.
Highly yeah. I mean, the logistics just get way more complicated, basically. So if I'm a team, I'm kind of annoyed by it. But the reasoning behind it, their reasoning behind it was safety. It was trying to prevent riders from going back to cars and trying to prevent like random slowdowns and stuff on the side of the road outside of a feed zone. That was the big one. Peloton's going along, there's not an official feed zone, and all of a sudden a rider is like swinging across the road to try to grab a bottle or whatever.
Well, it would be one of the press officers would have got dropped off, or like someone's like dad would be at the side of the road because they'd come along to watch it and would be helping out. So what now? They're just going to basically use like the second car to just leapfrog, or another car to just meet at the points of the course, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, in Laura's story in Cycling News, she talked to a couple different directors, and the directors are basically saying, yeah, it's kind of we have to figure out ways around it, but it is in some ways easier because we just send the Soigneurs to 4 designated points now, as opposed to like they have to go out and find a good spot, radio back, tell the riders, the riders maybe don't know it's really coming, blah, 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 blah. So I think it's generally a good move. I want more hunger knocks in pro cycling. And I think that it's one of those things that like actually could have an impact on crashes, which would be a double positive.
Stuart O'Grady had some interesting comments as the race director, just pointing out that like they didn't hear about this until like less than a month before the TDU, when they'd already printed the technical guides. And it's just so classic UCI. This is actually not a bad rule change. It's just like maybe give them a little time to...
They announced it on December 23rd.
Yeah, not great. And O'Grady, who runs this race, now has to come up with all the ways to comply with very little time to do so. It's just classic UCI. Yeah.
You can imagine whoever's job it is to put together a technical guide is just like very laissez-faire, relaxed, easygoing person as well. Definitely not like a stickler or uptight or anything. Can you imagine that Christmas in their house?
Oof.
Just PDFs and printing it.
Oh yeah, a lot of PDFs.
All right, that's just an update. We'll keep an eye on it. See whether anything happens. See if we get more hunger knocks.
Bonk watch.
Maybe a bit of bonking. All right, let's head over to Cav Corner. What's going on with Mark Cavendish?
Yes,
we're never going to rid ourselves of him.
No, and you know what? I'm glad we're
Nor
not.
do we want to.
Nor do we want to. We didn't get around to this little story on Monday, but I'm kind of glad that I saved it for you two. I feel you'd have missed out otherwise. So sort of following on from, so post-retirement Cav is basically now Ambassador Cav, right? He's like an unwilling influencer who, by virtue of being very good at one thing in our era, is now forced to sort of parade himself on social media for money, because why wouldn't you? Any of us here, if we were given enough money, we would, sit around in bed eating yogurt, I don't know, and posting on Instagram. Sure. So
if there's any yogurt companies out there that would like to pay us to do that, I think we'd yell about it
in a heartbeat. So he did his Taiwan stuff with Chris Froome end of last year. He's now at the Tour Down Under as an ambassador for that race. He's been going around taking loads of selfies, signing autographs, like making a lot of people's days. Like, it's nice to see. It's nice that he's going and getting the love and making those people's days. But we're also getting a lot of Cavendish social media content as he activates all of these sponsorship opportunities. So we've seen him sort of gallivanting around wineries. He's been walking through like Adelaide food markets, like marveling at quite sort of everyday food market things, maybe. But the other day,
is Cav the level of celebrity that he hasn't gone shopping in a while?
I don't know if it's like a pro sports thing, or I don't know. It was kind of a bit. It was a bit like if Anthony Bourdain had, been in a 80 kilometer per hour collision and was like discovering some. Maybe that's a bit mean. I promise I'm not a huge Cav hater. It's more of it's more about like seeing a mad thing in a museum. Anyway, the other day I opened up Instagram, got a massive jump scare when I clicked on his Instagram story, because if you would both like to look in the show notes at the photo attached, it was just a massive zoomed in photo of Cav's mouth.
Yeah.
Like as zoomed in as it's possible to get, showing off like a little like burn thing on his lip because he'd like sipped or like slurped some sweet corn broth that was way too hot and decided to tell the world about this.
Yeah, take a selfie too. And
it's just like, it's in between all of these sponsor opportunities and him using his hands to talk. We now just have this close up of his lips. And
it's very close.
It's so close.
It's a chapstick sponsorship opportunity. This could have been another sponsor, moment, but
yeah, agreed. And you know that hang it in the Louvre like verbal meme?
Yeah.
The whole week I've just been thinking of like that photo and a bunch of people like crowded around it. I don't know why. But I'm happy he's having a good time. There was a fantastic interview in the Telegraph that he did. I'm pretty sure we didn't talk about this on Monday. But yeah, I mean, all power to Cav. I can't wait. I'm now like excited to see what he does next. Like him walking through like a winery was also just exquisite.
I don't think I needed to be that close to Cav's lips. I don't think I needed it in my life.
No.
Yeah.
There's
it's so like it's literally you can't even, it's so zoomed in you can't even see his nose.
Right? It was in the newsletter on Monday if people want to go look it up on the website. He kind of is posting how everyone used to post on Facebook back in like 2008, where you'd be like, just gone to the shops or something. You literally just think out loud, and he's carrying on that tradition, which is, I love it. I'll be following on keenly now.
The post-retirement, kind of figuring out what that looks like for each rider is different, right? And if this is the version of Cav that we're going to get post-retirement, I am all for it. I think it's fantastic. We want Ambassador Cav. We want weird, like way too personal social media Cav. It works.
It works. It plays. Should we come back after the little interlude to find another retired rider who's maybe having less success than Cav in their post-retirement, which means we should give Cav more kudos?
Yes. All right. When we come back, Rigo. And we're back. This is a small corrections corner, I think, from last week. When did we talk about Rigoberto Uran playing football/soccer?
It was last week. Yeah.
It was last week.
Yeah.
And we said maybe he can play.
Well, that was because that's because the club was saying he was on a trial period.
Right. So maybe he could play. We thought maybe he'd play sort of like a wing back.
Yeah,
because he could run all day. Footage has emerged.
Yeah,
of Rigoberto Uran not even playing. Like there's no ball anywhere near what he's doing. He's just warming up.
There are cones.
There are perilous cones and stuff. Yeah,
cones around, and there are other players trying not to laugh at Rigoberto Uran, like kind of going through a warm up routine. Johnny, could you describe for me?
It's like, I don't know. Look, between this and the Cav segment, it feels like we're being mean. A lot of it is said with love, but in like a joking way of how you're allowed to take the piss out of people who are close friends. Maybe these friendships aren't reciprocated, but in my mind, that doesn't matter one bit.
And I think Rigo he knew this.
He knows
this was the end result that they were going for.
He's doing these drills like his high knees. He's opening and closing the gates. He's doing the little twisty one, but he's doing it like he has to keep all of his like limbs and joints at right angles. And
like he hasn't made a lateral movement in about 25 years.
It just goes to show the damage that being like a professional bike rider does to you. Actually, I missed this from the Cav segment. He's planning on running the Paris Marathon in April, and he's aiming for 4 hours and 30 minutes because that's all that his knees can do.
Oof.
Like his body is like he could like his engine is good enough to do way more than that, but like his body is basically given up on him. Looks to be the same case with Rigoberto Uran because there is just no like flexibility, agility. But he looks like he's having a great time. Like that's what the look on his face is like if I was allowed to like do drills with the Aston Villa squad, and I would probably look the same as him. But the difference is that Rigoberto Uran is a professional athlete.
Right. Which it's just a handy reminder that being good on a bicycle or being good in a lot of aerobic sports does not necessarily make you particularly coordinated. Like, and we're not saying this to be mean to Rigo. This is a publicity stunt, right? Like isn't he considering buying this team or buying a portion of this team?
He and Carlos Vives, the pop star, have some. They're involved in some. Okay, real quick though, could he be a goalkeeper? Like,
no,
that's like the most agile one you need.
Watch this video.
No, I've watched it, Dan. I have. He just looks awkward running, but if he's like kind of standing in place and he just has to dive one way or the other.
No, you got to be so agile. And these days, you've got to like actually like play them. You're not a football podcast. You've got to play out of the back.
And that's true.
You can't just stand there and let it hit you. I'm enjoying this thing for him. But I think it's important to put it out there, like to show, and for him to show that like these professional athletes, like the toll that professional cyclists take on his body is so evident in that one clip.
Yeah,
it's actually quite mad to see it. We'll put the link in the Discord.
The classic like rounded shoulders that a lot of cyclists have. I mean, I have them, right? I said this before we hit record. You spend 15 years trying to tuck your head into your shoulders and be aerodynamic, and turns out it's really bad for your posture.
Yeah,
right?
Comes at a cost.
Yeah, it comes at a cost. Cycling is not an impact sport, so generally you're not going to have a lot of the same issues that like a longtime runner or something's going to have, but you have other stuff that goes on.
Yeah.
My hips are permanently ruined by being a cyclist for a long time. You can see it in I think it's the reason why the video is so stark is that he's up against phenomenal athletes.
Well, and these guys, like the Colombian League, with all due respect, isn't like an elite league necessarily.
Yeah.
So,
but they're still, even at that level, these are like the 1% of humanity in terms of moving their bodies around.
Yeah,
right?
physiology,
pure athleticism. And it was always a fun storyline that Rigo was going to, play as a wingback for a Colombian soccer team. But man, you watch it and you're like, kudos for getting out there, buddy. But I don't think you're going to make the squad.
Do you think as sort of positions are getting, or aerodynamics is getting more important or more focused on, and we see, people pay more attention to body position, do you think this is going to be an increasing problem? Like, is Remco Evenepoel, famously once a pretty good footballer, is he going to get off the bike eventually at the end of his career and just, because he's a rider who relies on that body position a lot, but is his natural enough that he'll be fine and it's other people have to force it?
I would imagine that sort of like team physiologists are probably better about undoing some of the damage now than they used to be. It's I don't know, it's hard to say whether it's worse for older riders because they're older riders and they've just been at it longer and it like slowly damages you, or if the sort of the modern take on like they do a lot more core work, they do a lot more other stuff that kind of keeps your body in better shape now, whereas like Rigo, the guys that are sort of in those mid-30s, they would have spent a solid decade not doing any of that stuff, right? At which point it's kind of it's too late for them. Yeah. And I say that as someone the same age who was also racing and didn't do any of that stuff, and now it's too
paying the price.
Yeah.
The comments on the video, by the way, they're all in Spanish, but they are amazing.
Give us a taste.
Very scathing in a fun way. A lot of emojis, a lot of laughing, crying emojis.
Everyone loves Rigo. That's why
Rigo knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, okay.
This is why this isn't punching down. This is like Rigo did this on purpose, right?
Most of the comments are some kind of variation on insert thing here has better rhythm than this. Like there's multiple people saying a heart attack has better rhythm than this.
Why is that the thing they go for?
I don't. Well, it's heartbeat. Anyway, there's like some that are like the process of like getting a loan is like it flows more easily than this. There's that sort of thing. It's great. Yeah.
Who knew translated like Spanish put downs would be so entertaining?
It's pretty great.
Shall I give us another little a more somber news hit?
Yeah.
Akrea-B&B, formerly known as not even formerly known as the Men in Glass. That's just B&B. It's all going wrong for the French teams anyway.
It's a different team, but yeah.
Akea could fold. Basically, their sponsorship deals are up at the end of the year. Emmanuel Hubert is currently negotiating for new deals, but is looking a bit touch and go. He'll know by March or April whether they will still exist in 2026. So that's a French World Tour team where things are not looking great.
Right. I mean, they've got guaranteed access to the Tour de France, and they're a French team. I would wager that they'll be okay.
For now,
they're just going to. Yeah.
That's
true.
the problem.
True.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
They're not good enough to have. So that, I mean, the team just hasn't performed, and therefore they're going to not have a chance to race the World Tour at some point in the not too distant future. You would imagine when they no longer have that World Tour bid.
Yep.
You know, so
although like ASO is still going to pull those French teams because ASO knows that if they don't, pull those French teams in, then the French teams go away. That's why ASO does it.
Do they have enough? I'm trying to look at the graph. Do they have enough points to even get the pro team spots next season? I'm just trying to look.
Do you mean the guaranteed pro team spots?
Yeah, the guaranteed spots.
At the moment, they are in line for that. But that assumes that they continue to do okay this year. And like looking at Tudor and Q36.5, those are the teams that you're thinking might be getting those spots quite soon.
Yeah. We could have some actual excitement down the bottom end of the table this year, which would be...
I think it's really nice that we have Alaphilippe, Mark Hirschi, Pidcock, all of those second division teams now, so there's going to be a lot of competition. Nice from a viewing standpoint, not so nice from a will these teams even exist standpoint.
No, that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Is that other sports teams get relegated, they still exist. It's not just like you're dead now.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of French stuff and ASO, I'm going to throw a little promo in here. So Wade this week did an Overnight Success episode, which is a great podcast. If you're not already listening to it, you should go search for that wherever you get your pods. These are generally stories about how things were created, how businesses were built, basically. And the one that Wade did this week was about how the Amaury family, how ASO acquired the Tour de France. It's a fascinating episode. I'm going to play 90 seconds of it right here, and then we can maybe chat about what's in there.
January 2nd, 1977. Amaury went for his regular morning horse ride in the Chantilly forest. He was an experienced rider, but that morning his horse was nervous. He was thrown once, got back on, but then he accelerated into a gallop, and the horse reared up and threw him headfirst into a tree. He was found unconscious and later died that day. He was 67 years old. What followed was a bitter succession battle between his children that would last 6 years.
He had two sort of heirs, two children, and they had a fight over who inherited his assets. This left a question mark over the Tour de France, who would take control. Would it be his daughter or his son? Eventually, after it was a long legal dispute, mainly because he'd never written a will. The daughter presented this piece of paper, which is written in green ink, saying, "I want to give my assets to my daughter," but it wasn't even signed. So, was this a certified will or not? And the judge said, "No, that's not a certified will. It's just some words on a page."
There you go. So the episode kind of runs through how this family, again, acquired the Tour de France, this various succession battles as Mr. Amaury hit his head against a tree off a horse and passed away. It's a fascinating story. Go check it out. Search for Overnight Success wherever you get your podcast. Or if you are a member and you're on the member feed, if you're listening to this show on the member feed, it's in that same feed. So you can just go, it went up, I think, about a day before the episode you're listening to, and you can just go click on that and listen to it anytime. That's another reason, by the way, to jump on that member feed and to become a member of Escape Collective, is you get access to all that stuff in one easy place, and you don't hear any ads and all the rest of the stuff that we've been dropping into episodes as of late. So go check that one out. Great episode. And there's a solid backlog of fantastic episodes that Wade's put together. He's got another one coming up soon that I'm particularly intrigued by. I'm not gonna tell you what it is yet, but it's coming soon. So head over there, listen to that episode, subscribe to Overnight Success. You'll enjoy it.
The other voice in that clip was Alex Duff, who wrote Le Fric, which was the book that Chris Marshall-Bell mentioned the other week, wasn't it? Which is some nice synergy. So that's 2 recommendations to the book. I might even have to learn how to read now.
It's a very worthwhile read. It is. I mean, Chris was not bullshitting us when he said it was sort of the best book on how all of that, how ASO came to be, basically, and the business of it. So, like I said, go check that out. Overnight Success. Wade does a great job with it, and they're always fascinating stories from kind of the business side of cycling. And with that, let's head into After Dark. If you're on the free feed, thanks for listening. Leave us a rating, a review. That's always helpful wherever you listen to your podcast. It helps other people find us. Really appreciate it. And consider becoming a member. escapecollective.com/member. Sign up now. So that way you can get After Dark, where we're going to chat about some of the things we already talked about in a little more detail. Let's head into After Dark. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, hi. Dave Rome here. If you're hearing this, then you're on the free feed of the Escape Collective podcast network. We're happy you're here, and we'll continue to give plenty of expert opinion and analysis away for free. But really, our best stuff is saved for members of Escape Collective. After all, with no advertising or affiliate links, it's our members who make this all possible. From in-depth interviews with leading experts to class-leading reviews, through to unique things like my threaded series for anyone spinning spanners of any level. That's the sort of content you'll get by becoming a member. And as an added bonus, you won't have to listen to ads like this again. Head to escapecollective.com/join to sign up.